Good evening, how's everybody? Good, nice to have you along. Just one more announcement Damien forgot to mention. Anyone's got a mobile phone? Now's probably a perfect time to turn it off. Nice to have you along. We're going to spend about an hour and a half together this evening. And tonight is going to be a very, very powerful seminar. Do you want to know why? Because it's my last one. After tonight, I'm going to retire from giving seminars. So, well, we'll do a little bit at this event. So tonight we're going to have, it's going to be my last one. We're going to keep it fun. We're going to have it energetic. We're going to have some laughs. And I'm just going to, particularly today, I'm going to just view you as we're all a bunch of friends having a good old laugh and a chat together. So we're going to have, we're going to cover a lot of strong points. And my goal today is very, very simple. And that is, and I'm going to ask you at the end of the presentation if I've delivered. I just want to do two things today. One of them is I want to talk to you about the world of money and how the world of money works, but particularly about how the world of money works in a negative sense, in that how it's been designed so that you and I aren't wealthy. Because when we understand the rules, it makes it a lot easier. Then once we've uncovered that, what I want to do is I want to talk to you about two strategies, two of many strategies, but tonight just two, that are relatively easy, that I feel anybody in any financial position can use to improve the quality of your life. And at the end of the presentation, I'll ask you if in fact I've delivered mine to the bargain and have given you and delivered those two things. So who's up for that this evening? See a show of hands? Excellent. Now before we get started, this is your moment to be totally honest with me. Who came along today but was skeptical? Can I see a show of hands? Right, quite a few. Who came along today and thought probably something along the lines of, why would anyone on earth want to spend money on advertising and hire a hotel room and spend his time running seminars? If these things are so good, then why on earth is he in fact running seminars? Who thought that? Okay. And what about this one? Who was looking through the paper and when it said free workshop, thought, yeah, right. Never been, it's got some hands going up already. Never really been a believer in a free lunch. I wonder what the catch is. Anybody? Okay, right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, being the sort of person that likes to put my cards on the table, I'm going to lay my cards on the table up front. I'm going to tell everyone exactly what you can expect and what you're in for tonight. Every day of my life, someone asks me, why do I do this? Every day. Today I had an interview with this journalist who was just going, why on earth would you want to do this? Now the first thing I want to cover is this. Apart from, I understand why you may feel skeptical, because yes, particularly in the world of money, that's where most of us become skeptical when we start talking about money and financial stuff. Now, one of the things I wanted to mention to you tonight is this. The strategies that in fact I'm going to talk to you about tonight have been around for a long time. They're not new strategies. I haven't designed them. I haven't built them. I haven't created them. I don't own them. They're just strategies that I've come across and learnt about in the past from other people and applied them in my life and had good success. So there's nothing sort of out of the ordinary, nothing like pyramid selling or nothing like multi-level marketing. When we're talking about the property market and the stock market strategy, okay? Is everyone happy with that? Yep. Second thing, why do I run these seminars? Well, that's a little bit of a difficult one to explain because that's going to take a little bit more information. But essentially, Mandy and I dedicate about a week a month to running these events. And we do this for a very, very important reason, and the reason is this. As someone that left school at 13 years of age, as someone that had a very, very difficult upbringing, as someone that was considered by my friends and my peers to be a dropout that would never lead to anything, and as I've actually been able to do okay, my message to everybody here in the room and my ongoing message now and part of my passion is this. If anyone here in the room is at school, I encourage you to leave. If anyone in the room here is at university, I seriously encourage you to leave. If anyone here is in a job, I am telling you, you must leave. because the typical or current educational system will have us running down a process of going to school to get an education, to get a job, and the minute we get a job, we'll start paying lots of tax, we'll get heavily into debt, and we'll never get to live the life we really want to live. So I can't stress that enough, okay? Now that's one of the reasons why I do this, because there is in fact no educational system on the planet that teaches people how to live a decent lifestyle. And that's where I see my role. The last one was what's the catch? This is a free event. We take this event very, very seriously. We've had more than 50,000 people attend this event, and it's completely free. You come along here tonight, hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. You get educated. I don't stop talking for an hour and 45 minutes, and the more I talk, I get faster, so you learn more. And then what happens is you, at the end of this presentation, will have ideas, and those ideas are worth money. You could try and read books, you could try and do whatever it takes, but you've come here for 2 hours and you're going to basically get a shortcut. And you're going to leave here today and go, okay, so I've got some options. I know how that works, and I know how that works, and I know maybe I want to pursue that, maybe I don't. But at the end of this presentation, you'll have the opportunity to be part of our growing network of education. And that that network consists of courses. We train people, we teach people, we provide services, we do a whole bunch of things. There's an ongoing, growing network of things to help people, and under a heading, and the heading is to improve the financial quality and and your personal lifestyle. Now, all I'm saying to you is this, ladies and gentlemen, is that at the end of this presentation, I'm going to tell you about those things for no more than 120 seconds. And the rest of the time, this presentation will be all me giving you information that's going to be of benefit to you. But at the end of this presentation, if you want to continue your relationship with us, you're more than welcome. You have to pay for those things. If you don't want to, that's fine too. But you'll be under no pressure to do so, and we'll simply just put it on the table, and if you want to help yourself, you can. Is that fair enough? So that's, if there's a catch, then that's it, okay? Right, so let's get started. So what am I here to do? Well, essentially I'm here to prove to you that our current educational system has failed. I'm here to prove to you that our political and financial system is bleeding us dry. You probably know that already. I'm here to prove to you that if you don't make alternative plans, we're going to be in big trouble. I want to prove to you that there is another way. I want to prove to you that anyone, including you, can become wealthy. I want to show you a couple of simple strategies to achieve that goal, that result, and I want to reveal to you our current educational system that we're building. So that's what you're in for tonight. So who's up for that this evening? Yeah? Okay. Now this presentation is going to be a little bit interactive and a little bit fun, and so when I ask questions, call out the answers. You don't have to worry about putting your hands up, okay? It's a free-for-all. Just get out there and call things out. The more you get involved, the more you remember. So we're going to make this fun, okay? It's a pretty big group here tonight, but that's all right. We'll try and make it as intimate as possible. So here we go. Everyone wants this thing. You ready? It's called wealth. Now what is it? What is wealth? Money? Freedom? Security? Options? Happiness? Choice? Up the back. What do you want up the back? Assets? Self-actualization. Woohoo. Okay, power. Now we're talking. All right, good. Now here's the point, is I looked up the definition of wealth in the dictionary. I was more confused after I read it than before. So I've created my own definition, and here it is. To be able to maintain the lifestyle of your choice without having to work. Now, how many people do you think actually achieve that definition of wealth? As a percentage, roughly, what do you reckon? 10%? Any advances on 10? 2? Okay. 1%? Okay. It's slightly less than 1%. So only slightly less than 1% ever achieve it, and yet everybody wants it. So here's my question to you. Is it difficult to achieve? Yes or no? Hands up for yes? Hands up for no? Hands up for waiting for me to tell you? Well, the answer is this, and I'm going to say this at least 4 times throughout the presentation. Wealth is not difficult to achieve. We think it's difficult to achieve because we only ever see a very small percentage of people ever achieve it. So therefore we conclude it must be difficult, or these people must be doing something strange, or they must be doing something wrong, or maybe they're lucky, or all those type of things. But wealth is not difficult. Wealth is not difficult at all. There is in fact only one person on the planet that is stopping you from becoming wealthy. Who do you reckon that might be? It's ourselves. Exactly. At the end of the day, the buck stops here. It's not your mum or dad. It's not your background. It's not how poor your bank balance looks. It's not that you've got a county court judgment or 17 credit cards in default. It's not that you're good looking or not. It's not that you're particularly bright, because I'm certainly not. You know, it's none of those things. It's all a choice. That's what it is, because if you were honest with yourself, if you actually said, look, if you went out there and committed, and absolutely committed and said, right, I'm going out there and I am committing and I'll do whatever it takes to build wealth, do you reckon you could achieve that in 10 years' time? Easily. Do you reckon you could achieve it in 5 years' time? Probably. Maybe even less, maybe 1 or 2 years. But the point is that most of us don't, because most of us like to put our blames and responsibilities on everybody else except ourselves. So the only person that is responsible for you is you. And it's all about the decisions and choices you make. But there are some other things that do work against us, and to understand those things makes a little bit more sense. Now I want to ask you some questions. So, okay, only 1% of the earth achieves wealth. So it's a little bit like a river. The river is flowing, and we're all in it going downstream. The river certainly isn't stationary, so we have to swim harder than normal to fight that current, to fight that stream. Because the systems that control the distribution of money have stacked creating wealth against us. And that's what I want to talk to you about now. Here's some questions. Why is it the vast majority of people on our planet today retire poor? Why is it that after we get our pay and then we pay our bills, we have very little, if anything, left over? Why is it that both in many families, both partners are working harder than they've ever worked before, but they're making do with less? Why do our taxes keep increasing? Why are our basic services struggling? Basic services like health, transport, policing, education. Why is the quality of our life decreasing? Why is it that only 1% of the population of the earth is considered wealthy? Now, have you ever thought about those questions? We all do from time to time, don't we? Now, why is it that these things actually exist and are happening? I'll tell you the answer. It's all to do with the systems that control the distribution of money. It's all about the systems that control the distribution of money. And those systems are made up of the banking system, the governmental system, and the educational system. And most of us don't know how these systems work. And so today, I'm going to uncover what's going on so that you can clearly see what's happening in the world of money. Right. So, to illustrate the point, before I go on to that, to illustrate the point, something very interesting about the world we live in today. Who would share this thought with me? I personally feel that the world we live in today, I personally am a little bit disillusioned with the world we live in today. Now, who would share that thought? Okay, most of us. Now, I'm a pretty positive sort of person, but that's how I feel. I'll tell you the reason why. We live in a planet that has more food on it to feed the entire population, and yet hundreds of millions of people are starving. We live on a planet that has the ability to provide the whole world with clean drinking water, and yet some countries can't turn on the tap and drink the water. We live in a country that in fact has more money on it, that if it was distributed equally, we'd have more of it each than we could ever spend. And yet 96% of us are broke. We live in a planet where we've got enough funding and certainly the knowledge to solve some of the world's most dangerous and life-threatening diseases, and yet 90% of research and 90% of funding goes towards consumer products like Viagra. So do you reckon we might live in a world that's a little bit unbalanced? Yeah, so that sort of sets the scene. Now you talk about money, for example, because that's what we're here to talk about tonight. If you and I collected all the money on earth, all the money, every single ounce of money, and put it into a pot, did you know we'd all be multimillionaires? You take all the trillions of pounds, dollars, euros, and all the world's currencies and put it into a pot, the hundreds of trillions of dollars, and you divide it amongst just 6 billion. We're all really rich. And yet today, just the richest 200 people on earth, their income combined exceeds 40% of the whole globe. Can you believe that? 200 people, worth the same as 2.4 billion. I mean, that's just phenomenal. That is absolutely unbelievable. We're living in the fastest transfer of wealth in human history. Okay, so now let's get down to tin tacks. If you wanted to control the distribution of money, what would be one thing that you'd be really super keen to get your hands on? Knowledge? What else? Something else? Come, we're all friends in the room. Okay, who said bank? Right. You'd want to get your hand on a bank, wouldn't you? Because if you and I borrow money, who do we go to? Okay, we go to the bank. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Now, in fact, if you look at every country on earth has a central bank. So in England, you've got the Bank of England, yeah? In Australia, you've got the Reserve Bank of Australia. In America, you've got the Federal Reserve. Every country has a central bank. Now, a very clever bunch of very influential people, going back a little bit of time, thought it would be a great idea if we could take control of a bank. So they put together a very cunning plan and took control of, at the time, one of the world's largest central banks. This set in motion a chain of events that was going to affect mankind from that moment forward. Now, do you know which bank that was? Barclays? I'll tell you which bank it was. It was, in fact, the Bank of England. And the Bank of England became privately owned, which meant, see, the bank actually is an asset of the people. It prints money, it controls interest rates, etc. And what happens is that it's an asset to the country, and the people really own it, and the government controls it. But what happened is if you take the control away from the people or government and put it into private hands, it means that the government now no longer has control of this entity. Now, this set off in motion a chain of events, you see, and those chain of events were that the governments that now need money are forced to borrow money from the central bank. You see, very clever. So one by one, all the banks around the world have been taken over and in private hands. That includes the majority of the world's banks. And now we have this new breed of international central banks, which is the likes of the International Monetary Fund and World Bank, and you've got European Central Bank and all these type of banks. So what happens is the government, firstly, borrows money. Now, who in the room here is familiar with the concept that governments borrow money? See, show of hands? Okay, most of us. Now, we read about it. Gordon Brown borrows $3 billion, Gordon Brown borrows $5 billion, Gordon Brown does this, Gordon Brown does that. So the banks borrow money. The problem is the banks have to pay that money back with interest. Now, let's put this in perspective for you. We'll talk about three countries. Let's talk about Australia, let's talk about Great Britain, and let's talk about America, seeing as though we're all semi-related. Now, Australia was voted 40 years ago the richest country on earth. Today, Australia is on the verge of bankruptcy. The government owes today $307 billion. How much money do you think England owes today? Anyone have any idea? England owes £380 billion, and it's rising at £1.5 million every 30 minutes. How much money do you think America owes? America owes $20 trillion. Now, this is bad news. This is really bad news, because this is what happens. The governments borrow money. But like if you and I get into debt and get lots of credit cards and personal loans, we're in trouble, aren't we? Because we've got to pay the money back with interest, right? So the government goes heavily into debt. And they go into debt for infrastructure, development, war, defence, all these sort of stuff. And a lot of it's just a whole bunch of financial mishaps anyway. But they go heavily into debt, they've got to pay the money back. Now, so the country gets into debt. Now, when the repayments on this debt consume revenues and gets totally out of control, the governments then have to do three things, or in history, they all do the same three things. The first thing they do is sell the country's assets. So take Australia, for example. 40 years ago, richest country on earth, full of natural resources, didn't pick on any of its neighbours, had no bad, nothing wrong down there, too far away probably anyway. So anyway, it's got no government within the last 40 years got heavily into debt, and as a way to remedy the situation, they sold all the country's assets to get a whole pile of cash in, you see, paid back the debt. So over the last 40 years, the Australian government has sold, as of 2 months ago, everything in Australia. The only thing they had left was Telstra. Telstra is the equivalent of BT. They still owned 1/3 and they've sold it. Now all of the Australian assets are foreign owned. Australia owes nothing. Not even kangaroos are Australian owned anymore, right? Foster's, Vegemite, it's gone. Everything's gone, okay? But, you know, Australians, the wealth of the country is an absolute representation of the wealth of the individual, you see. So what happens now is the Australian government got all the money in, paid back the debt, but then they got back into debt again, you see. This time they didn't have the assets. So who do they turn to next time to raise the money? The people, because you and I are the last standing asset. So taxes increase. Now, the problem is in England, we've been down this path for a lot longer than Australia, for hundreds of years. Lots of wars, you know, all that type of stuff. Now, if you and I saw the tax rate we pay here, income tax, value-added tax, stealth tax, council tax, import tax, export tax, congestion charge, which is just another tax. Do you know what tax rate we actually pay here? 80%. You and I are working for 20p in the pound. But hang on, it gets worse. What happens next is the government stops spending. Because they don't have the money, they stop spending on the public services that our taxes are meant to pay for. So they stop spending on the health service. They stop spending on the education system. They stop spending on the transportation service. They stop spending on the policing and safety and environment. And that sets off in motion a chain of events, because what happens, and incidentally, when you and I finally complain about it and we go, hey, look, we're sick of this. I've been paying my taxes. I want a good health service. Fix it. What's their only solution to fix the problem? Pay more taxes and borrow more money. So then you and I, the financial burden's passed on to you and I. You and I now have this increasing taxes and decreasing spending on public services. So to compensate for it, did you know it's a process of gradualisation? We start working more. We start sacrificing our weekends. We start taking the extra hours. We start taking the second and third job to maintain the quality of life that we're used to. Because every year, less and less money or more money is coming out of our paycheck, but we're also noticing our money's just not buying as much as it used to anymore because of all the taxes and everything. And so we start compensating for it by going, what's working? I need a pay rise. I need to work more. I need to earn more money. So we go out there and we take more money. We work more to earn more money. And in the process of earning more money, we pay more taxes. Vicious cycle. But the banks aren't happy with that alone. They're not happy with just getting us independently or indirectly. They want to get us directly as well. So they then go and educate you and I to do all the wrong things with our money to maximize their profits. They want you and I to have as many accounts as possible, as many credit cards as possible, as much debt as possible. They want to get you and I into a long-term commitment, 25, 30 years. Never pay off your mortgage. You know, take 30 years should never have taken 30 years to pay off your mortgage. It's how they calculate interest. They get all their interest up front. You know, they do everything to maximize their profits at our expense. So that way we can never move. We're stuck. Because you know what I mean? Most of us are literally stuck. We're so busy working, we haven't got 5 minutes to even question what they're doing. Then you've got the educational system. And the educational system, do you reckon that hasn't been designed? I mean, this is the classic. The educational system says, go to school, get an education. What's the next step? Get a job. And what does job stand for? Exactly, just over broke. Then the government says, you're working, are you? Brilliant. We better start charging you tax. And you see, you know what they do? Is they take it. What right do they have to take our tax off us before we get our money? But they take our tax out of us first, because could you imagine if they sent us an invoice? We'd go, what am I paying that for? Nothing works anyway, okay? So we pay taxes first, then the bank says, you're working. Fantastic. We better get you heavily into debt. So they get us heavily into debt. I mean, you think about it. The person that goes to university, before they've even started, leaves owing 10 grand, right? Okay, then so you go to school, you get an education, you get a job, which stands for just over broke. The government gets you heavily taxed. The bank gets you heavily into debt. You never have any money. You struggle all your life and eventually die poor. And as a measure of goodwill, they hit us with inheritance tax on the way out. I mean, think about it. Because they wouldn't want you to pass on your wealth to your children. because then they wouldn't keep the thing going. I mean, it's true, isn't it? It's exactly what's happening. Could you imagine on the first day of school if the teacher went up to you and said, "Rightio, kiddos, I'll tell you how this is going to work. Now look, essentially you're going to be here for about 7 years in primary school, you're going to work really hard, then we're going to send you to university, and look, you're going to be there for another 4 or 5 years, and then you're going to work really hard. Then you're going to go and get a job, and you're going to work in your job for the next 45 years. You'll never have any money, and you'll eventually try and rely on a pension, which won't exist anyway, and statistically you'll die in 2.7 years. Do you reckon we'd be in for that? No, we'd be running out the door like 1,000,000 miles an hour, apart from the 2 kids at the back, which probably were on drugs and missed the question. You know what I mean? But that's the system we live in today. That's the educational system. And you look at what's happening now. It's estimated. It reminds me of the story. I'll share it with you. It reminds me of the story that let's say that parents have this young child. The young child grows up to become a young man. Let's say it's a young boy, right? So it grows up to become a young man. And the parents are encouraging the young guy there to do well at school and to do well at university and all those things and to give him his best shot, because that's what they think's important, you know? Anyway, he does all that and gets himself a job. And then one day he comes home to his parents, he says, "Look, Mum and Dad, I've got my first paycheck, I've got my independence." And they say, "That's fantastic, son, well done." And the minute he gets his first check, he finds himself standing on a symbolic treadmill. You know the one. What do we call it? The 9 to 5 treadmill? But it's in fact the 9 o'clock in the morning to 8:45 the next day treadmill these days. So he's on the treadmill, but the treadmill's not moving. And he thinks to himself, "This is rather interesting. Oh well, never mind." But he thinks, "You know what I should do? I should go and get myself a credit card. Yeah, that's a good idea. I won't use it, but I'll get one because if I'm ever short for money, I can use my credit card. And you know what? I always pay it off whenever I spend money. I'll have the right intentions. And guess who's more than happy to help? The bank. You better believe it. In fact, the bank, don't get me started on the bank. The bank even works on our psychology. They have different coloured credit cards. So what have you got? You got the gold one, or you got the platinum card? I mean, you know what I mean? Or you got the silver card, or what have you got? Because they're trying to work on our egos, you know. Like we just drove down from Birmingham last night. We had a seminar in Birmingham last night, and we're driving down. You pull up on the motorway to welcome break to go in there and have a cup of tea or something. You go inside. Who's straight in the front door as soon as you walk in? Virgin credit cards, okay? Then you're at Gatwick Airport, flying off somewhere. You go through international security clearance, you go into the main area, and as you walk into the lounge, guess who's right in front of you? Halifax credit cards. Hey, take out our credit card and we'll give you a disposable camera. You know, all these things, you know, because they can't lose on credit cards. Now, so anyway, going back to the story, this young lad comes on, he thinks, I'll go and get myself a nice credit card. So he applies for the credit card, bank's more than happy to help. So then he's put it in his nice wallet, it's all nice and shiny and new. And one day he goes out to the shopping centre where he wouldn't normally spend any money, and he sees that thing and he thinks, oh, can't really afford that, but you know what? I'll put it on the credit card and I'll work out some way to, sort it out later on. So he hands the credit card over the counter. The person there swipes the credit card. The minute it's swiped, it registers electronically and immediately with the credit card company, and interest starts being charged immediately. Next thing, before he's even got the bag with the goodies in it, he's noticed the treadmill starts moving. He's on the treadmill, he thinks, whoa, what's going on here? And the treadmill starts moving. He thinks, but this is all right. It's not too fast paced, I can handle it. But the treadmill cycle has started with a credit card. Then he thinks to himself, I need a car. Haven't got any money. I know what I'll do. I'll go and get a personal loan for a car. Depreciating asset, going to be worth nothing in 10 years' time, but he's going to pay double the value in 10 years' time through interest, yeah? So he's got the credit card, he's paying the credit card, now he's paying the car, and the treadmill starts going a little bit faster, you see. Then he's in his car one day, and he's cruising down the road, and he sees through the corner of his eye this beautiful woman. He pulls over in his nice new car, he parks the car, hops out, walks up to the nice young lady and starts talking. Next thing, one thing leads to another, and they fall in love and get married. And they think to themselves, well, we've got to have a house, but we haven't got any money. Don't worry, let's go and get a massive mortgage, minimal deposit to impress all the people we don't really care about. So they go and get this massive mortgage, minimal deposit, they're paying the mortgage, they're paying the car and the credit card. Now the treadmill starts going a little bit faster, they're starting to work a little bit harder. Then they think to themselves, we can't have a great big house with the latest plasma screen TV and DVD and all the gear to impress all our friends that we don't really care about. So they go and get all these personal loans, and they've got debts coming out of their eyeballs, but they look good, and they've got to paying the personal loans, they're paying the car, they're paying the credit cards, they're paying the mortgage, then the treadmill's going really fast, and they're working flat out. Then his wife comes home one day and says, I've got to talk to you. He says, well, can't you see I'm a little bit busy at the moment? She says, no, it's really important, I've got to talk to you. He says, well, effectively, what I'm doing here is very important as well. She goes, we don't understand. This is absolutely important, I must talk to you. He says, well, what is it then? She says, I'm pregnant, and the guy's hanging on the treadmill for dear life because they're about to lose a wage. And isn't that what happens? We spend 5 minutes getting into, going to give myself a heart attack one of these days. We spend 5 minutes getting into debt, and then we spend a lifetime trying to get out of it. So are we seeing results? Right here, right now, yes. It's estimated 50% of the population is living on 110% of their income. I just heard on the news this morning, on the way down here, one of the radio stations was saying something along the lines of there's a record level of people borrowing money just to make bill payments. Did anyone hear that this morning? I mean, this is really bad news. 1 in 3 people has a county court judgment. 44% of marriages end in divorce. What's the biggest contributing factor to divorce? Financial pressure. Basic struggling services like the NHS, transport, policing, education, pension time bomb. The government knows that at some point in the future they're not going to be able to afford to pay people the pension. Record levels of government debt. These are the cracks in the framework. We're seeing the cracks now appearing. We've got record levels of debt, record levels of taxes, terrible public services, and a bunch of people that are really scared and concerned about their future. I mean, people come up to me all the time and I can tell they've got that look in their face. They're looking down the barrel of Gordon Brown's retirement plan thinking, what on earth am I going to do? And I can understand totally how people feel. Because what do you do? Who can you rely on? You know, it's very difficult. So, the system is designed to make you dependent on it. It's designed so you never have the time or the money to ever challenge it. Does that make sense? Of course it does. We all know it deep down, don't we? Right. So, by the way, if you're thinking this was going to be like a semi-motivational seminar, we are getting onto the good parts. So, the hard truth is this. If you don't make plans to become financially independent, the system will make you part of its plan. So at the end of the day, the second time I'm going to say it, the only person that is stopping you from becoming wealthy is who? Yourself. It falls on you. You take full responsibility for that. And you've got to remember, wealth is a choice. It's not about your history, not about your past, not about your bank balance, not about how good looking you are. None of those things. It's a choice. Okay. One thing that's worthwhile keeping in mind is it's absolutely impossible to ever save your way to wealth. You can never work in a job and earn enough money to save your way to wealth. A lot of people confuse wealth with a high income. It doesn't work. It doesn't really matter whether someone's on 20 grand a year or 200 grand a year. The person on 200 has just got more expensive toys. It's not real wealth. So don't aim for income, aim for passive income. So what you need is a strategy to get you from where you are to where you want to go. Okay, so here's the strategy. The strategy, and by the way, there's a number of ways to become independent. You can try and invent something. You can try and start your own business. There's lots of options. But the safest way that I know of, in all the years of my research, is definitely becoming a personal and private investor. So what you want to do is you want to acquire quality income-producing assets, actively increase the value of those assets and the returns until you have enough passive income to quit work forever. That's the key. That's what you're after. To acquire quality income-producing assets, actively increase the value and returns of those assets until you have enough passive income to quit work forever. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a couple of processes tonight. And I'm going to work through some of these together. Now, the first one that I want to go through is this. And I'm not going to cover a lot of information on this because you know what? People usually aren't really interested in it. And it's a shame because it's the most overlooked aspect of wealth creation. And that is building the right mindset for success. But to illustrate the point in a very succinct way, I want to ask you a question. What's the thing that stops most people from getting into the property market, getting into the stock market, starting their own business? What's that thing? Fear, right. What's that thing? Fear. Okay. Now, fear is a lack of what? Lack of knowledge and a lack of confidence. Now, a lack of knowledge comes from a lack of what? Education. And that leads us right back to where we started, doesn't it? Because look at our current educational system. If you wanted to become wealthy, where would you go? I mean, Who's interested in helping you become wealthy? Is the bank? No. What about the government? No. What about school and university? Not really. 90% of the financial planning industry is controlled by banks, 90%. And they're only interested in one thing, and that's making a profit from you. So it's fear. Fear stops most people from taking that next step. The problem is in the past, we've learned a whole terrible bunch of bad money-making habits. Like, for example, I'll give you a classic example. My mum and dad told me when I left home, they said, son, whatever you do, never borrow money. Now, would you say, well, is that good advice? Well, in some ways, it is good advice, isn't it? And you can tell they had my best interests at heart. But what does that mean? Does that mean I'm never going to get a mortgage for a property? Does that mean I have to save up every penny for every property I buy? That's going to take me forever. I'm never going to accomplish that. And my mum, I'd meet with my mum, who I love very, very dearly, and we'd sit down for a coffee, not so much now, but when we were in Melbourne, and, we'd be like, hi, Mum, how are you going? And she'd be, yeah, good, son, you, how are you? I say, yeah, really good. What have you been up to? Oh, Mandy and I bought a couple of flats on the weekend. You did what? Well, how many have you got now? Oh, well, we've got about 6 or 7. This is at the time. Gee, when you bought 2 more? Are you crazy? Think about all the debt you're getting yourself into. Do you see what happened to the people in the late 80s, early 90s? And what are you doing? They're getting yourself into debt. I don't understand you. What's wrong with you? You know what they say? The higher you climb, the harder you fall. Now, isn't that interesting? Because she came from an upbringing of whatever you do, never borrow money. Didn't understand the difference between good debts and bad debts. Didn't understand any of that sort of stuff. In fact, only now that we've started, Mandy and I have had success, they've had to change their full mindset. Because if you're going to get into the property market, you're not going to save every penny for every property you buy. You're going to have to borrow money through the bank to get a buy-to-let mortgage. That way, you put in a little bit of money, the bank gives you the rest. A little bit more, another property bank gives you the rest. A little bit more, you keep going. So there's going to come a time when you might owe the bank 2, 3, 4 million pounds. Now, who would say today, right now, sitting in your chair, maybe that might make you feel a little bit uncomfortable? Yeah, most of us, because we've come from that type of upbringing. Now, wealthy people have the opposite, the complete opposite psychology. And we have to build that psychology. We have to change those habits. We have to put them away and embrace new habits. But this is where it gets hard. And here's a little exercise for you to prove the point. You ready for a little bit of fun? Okay. You ready? I want everyone to put your hands up in the air like this. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to put your hands together like that. Right, now which thumb's on top, left or right? Okay, now see, some of you got left and some of you have right. Now they say if your left thumb is the one on top, you are unbelievably intelligent. Okay, put your hands back up in the air again. Right, this time I want you to put your hands together and put the other thumb on top. Now, how does that feel? It does, doesn't it? Uncomfortable, strange, awkward. Right. Now, put your hands back up in the air again. And this time I want you just to fold your arms. Now, which arm's on top, left or right? Right? Some of you have left, some of you have right. Now, they say if your right arm is the one on top, you are unbelievably good. It's too rude. Put your hands back up in the air again. Now, if one of you says fold your arms and put your other arm on top. It's so funny. I must have had 60 odd thousand people stick their hands up in the air, and every time I do it, I always see half a dozen going, uh-oh, it's not working. Now, what's this got to do with investing? Absolutely nothing. But it's got to do with this. It's exactly what I was talking about. You do something a certain way, guess what? You use a habit, you own it, you've got a first mortgage on it. Now, there's the problem. You go out and you go to change that habit, it's going to feel very uncomfortable. And until you can overcome that barrier, then that's going to hold you back. Now, interestingly, and I want to give you a little bit of an acknowledgement, and that is that we feel that our advertisements probably were seen by around 30 million people when we were advertising. And this week, and last week when we've run this roadshow around the UK, we've seen roughly around 3,500 people. So a lot of people saw our advertisement and didn't come. A lot of them would have read it and thought, no, it sounds a bit not sure, and it sounds too good to be true, and there's got to be a catch, and why would someone do it? And they're going to go there, and then they're going to try and sell me something, and all that sort of stuff. But the point is, against all those things, you decide to come. So if you were to actually work out an average, you've put yourself in a very, very small, minute group of people. So you could say in some ways you did overcome that sense of uncomfortableness. Would that be fair? Yeah. And that's the type of feeling you have all the time, you see. We have to constantly battle with. But it's a matter of overcoming that so that you can move forward. You see, we've learned a lot of bad habits. We've got to create good habits. That's why I keep saying the only person responsible for your future is you. If you don't like where you are, you've got to make change. Feels uncomfortable? Well, that's the business. You're just going to be constantly struggling with this 1 foot in the comfort zone and 1 foot wanting to go and do something. And you're going to be going, oh, I really want to step over there, but oh, it's comfortable here. I really want to go over there, but look what I can get if I'm over here. I can have such a great life, but oh, it's too risky. See, that's that constant battle we've got going on all the time. I want to get into the property market, yeah, but I've heard horror stories. Look at the stock market. Oh, I don't know about the stock market. People lose money. You see, it's all about that. And until we overcome that, it's always going to be difficult. But you have made a step. You can't come to you today, and that's worth acknowledging because a lot of people saw our ad and didn't come. Next thing, I want you to pick a figure. I want you to pick a figure of how much money you'd like coming in each year as a wage without having to work. An annual salary without having to work. I want you to write it down. An annual salary. So a once-off lump sum figure coming in as a wage without having to work. Okay. Now, who put down, you got it done? Okay. Who put down what you're currently earning in your job? Yeah, good. Okay, that doesn't matter. It's good. Good place to start. Having the money you're currently earning coming in, but not have to work for it. Okay, that's fine. Who put down £50,000 a year? Excellent. Anyone put down £100,000 a year? It's nice. Anyone put down £250,000 a year? Okay. Anyone put down £500,000 a year? Anyone put down £1 million a year? Okay. Anyone put down anything over £5 million? Boy, there's a lot of greedy people around, isn't there? Now, the point is this, is it doesn't matter what you wrote down. We have to go through a formula that is going to equate that into something that's tangible. But I want to talk to you about something very, very seriously for a moment. You came here to a seminar that talked about, and the headline was something like, I think it was a multimillionaire in 5 years and never work again. Something like that, yeah? So it's taken me and Mandy, I can't have all the credit because certainly Mandy is probably more than 50%, have become multimillionaires in 5 years. It took us 3 years to become millionaires. About 3.5 million now. So that's okay, and it's growing. Now, what I wanted to share with you is this, and this is a very important point. Millionaire is not actually very important, and multimillionaire is also not very important. And if I could give you one thing in the room, or one strong message, it would be this. And I hope for those of you that were thinking big figures and big grandiose things, that I hope I don't burst your bubble in saying this. But if you could actually create a passive income after tax of between $50,000 and £100,000 a year, there's not much you can't do. Now, you're not going to have a yacht parked in Monte Carlo Harbour. You're not going to go and have a private jet waiting to travel and escort you around the planet. But you will be able to live a very comfortable lifestyle. You'll be able to have a wonderful house, a wonderful little holiday home somewhere, and enough money to be able to go backwards and forwards and enjoy travelling and enjoy all the wonderful things you want to do with your family and your loved ones, and you can do that on that sort of money. So we're not trying to pitch some ridiculous, crazy, way out type of goal. It's very realistic. But here's the point. Millionaire and multimillionaire comes as a result of doing things right and just giving it a little bit of time. But if you could get to that point, so this is why one of the main reasons why I do this is because I want to share my information about the world of money. But also, I believe that if people could get to a point, if people would actually make the decision to stop working and say no to mediocrity and no to comfort and actually take on the challenge, if you could get to a point of earning between £50,000 and £100,000 a year or more, then you'd be able to then focus on your natural talents. Who in the room here now could honestly say, hand on heart, that you can't wait to get up in the morning every day to go to work? Who could honestly say they just can't wait? Right, we usually get about 1 or 2 people. Right, so what that means, and if you're in that position, you're very fortunate. But what that really means is that most people are doing something they don't particularly enjoy. Now, if you could get to a point of having a passive income, then you're able to focus on the things you enjoy. And that could be painting for someone, gardening for someone else, cooking for someone else, becoming someone that goes and tries to strangle crocodiles, or whatever that thing is. You're up to do that. Now, if everyone on earth focused on their natural talents, could you imagine how much of a great place this would be? But we've got like 98% of the population doing everything they hate. So how can we be happy? You see, there's a lot more to this than just what sounds good. That's why Damien said there's a lot more to this about making money from a financial sense. It has a bigger impact. And that's why we encourage people to say, look, if you come here today and you learn something or you think something's good, then don't keep it inside. Tell people about it. Get them sort of thinking. Because you know what? This is one of the problems, is that your peer group usually is at the same level that you're at. And what happens is, if you want to try and rise above that, guess who are the two lots of people that want to bring you straight back down to earth? Your family and your friends. And it's not because they don't love you, it's because it makes them feel uncomfortable because you're exposing their comfort zone. You see, a lot of our friends have changed over the years. But the point is you've got to do it the other way. You, in fact, have to rise up and take them with you. Then you make them change their perception of things. And that's hard because a lot of people don't want to be changed. They like where they are and they own it. It's theirs. And it really comes down to 2 things, and it comes down to really how much you want to make a difference. Because you don't need to come here to learn how to become wealthy. You can do it on your own. I'm just going to help steer you in the right direction. So getting back to the figure, how do we quantify that? So if I'm going to use an example of £100,000 a year, and if you wanted £100,000 a year, the second thing you've got to do is you've got to work out, so first what it is, the second thing is what sort of return you can get. So if you stick your money in the bank, what sort of return can you get? 2%? Okay. You stick your money in the stock market, what sort of return can you get? Question mark? Okay, you stick your money in property, what sort of return can you get? Maybe 6% up, whatever. Doesn't really matter at this point. It's just giving you an idea. So I've used 8%. So this is the formula that you have to start with. What do you want? What return can you get? Then you use this formula. You take £100,000, so if it's 100 grand you want, you take £100,000 and you divide it by your return factor. So if I had a calculator, I'd go 100,000, divide 8, and hit the percent button. And that would give me this figure here, 1.25 million. So what's that saying is this. I need 1.25 million pounds worth of something, maybe property, let's say, giving me an 8% return. Because if I have, in fact, 1.25 million pounds worth of property giving me an 8% return, then I will get £100,000 a year. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, there's 2 points of leverage. There's the amount of assets you own, and there's the return you get on those assets. So to make this really crystal clear, if you turned that 1.25 and doubled it into 2.5, but you kept this 8 at 8%, what's going to happen up here? You keep that at 8, you double that, what happens up here? It doubles. Okay. You keep that at 1.25, you turn that to 16, what happens up here? Doubles. You turn that to 2.5, you double it to 2.5, you double that to 16, what happens up here? Quadruples. So if you want to become and build wealth, what you have to do is become very good at maximising this and maximising this as fast as possible, because you're going to get this in the shortest possible time frame. Make sense? Okay, simple. So we're going to look at 2 strategies today. One strategy is for this, and one strategy is for this. Although in saying that, they both work very, very well independently, but they work even better as a pair. We're going to talk about property here, and we're going to talk about a share strategy here for that. Rightio. So part 1, building your asset base. So to build our asset base, we're going to use property. And there's 3 reasons why we choose property. 1, for stability. 2 for capital growth, and 3 for access to cash. So 3 reasons why we choose property: stability, capital growth, and access to cash. Now, we do have risks with property. So let's go through the risks. What are the risks? Well, we've got interest rates, which could go up. We've got structural problems, which could be a risk. We've got vacancy, not having a tenant, that could be a risk. Having a bad tenant could be a risk. And the market collapsing could be a risk. They're the 5 major risks with property. But those risks can be managed. For example, what do you do to protect yourself against an interest rate rise? Well, very simply, you're fixing your interest rate. And long-term interest rates now are cheap, and you can even go and get a 30-year, I think a 25 or 30-year fixed rate. So you pay a little bit more, but that's just the business. It's part, you call it a little bit more insurance. Structural problems can be fixed by getting a building survey or inspection. Vacancy can be fixed by making sure that you do your due diligence and you make sure you've quantified as a percentage how many properties are vacant before you ever buy in that area. And you want to keep your vacancy percentage less than 5%. Anything greater than that could take longer to rent out your flat or your house. Bad tenants can be covered by taking out a landlord insurance policy. Property downturn is covered by 1, taking out fixed rates, and 2, never selling. You never ever sell your properties. So that's the risks, they're the fixes, in brief. How do we generate wealth with property? What are the benefits of property? Property has produced more millionaires worldwide than any other asset. Property has always gone up in value. If you bought just under £10,000 worth of property in 1973, what do you reckon that property is worth? Oh, by the way, this is average UK property, so they've taken all sales and divided it to get an average. So it takes into account London, Birmingham, Manchester, Bristol, Leeds, everything in a pot. If you bought just under £10,000 worth of property in 73, what's that £10,000 worth today, do you think? Everyone always gets very optimistic when I ask that question. It's 115,000. Now that's actually right on the money, because property analysts say that property doubles in value every 7 to 10 years. So round that up to 10,000 in 73. That means in 83, that 10,000 should be worth 20. In 93, the 20 should be worth 40. In 2003, the 40 should be worth 80. But in fact, we're seeing that it's doubling faster than every 10 years. It's doubling on average every 7 to 8 years. And that trend will continue to happen. So if you bought £1 million worth of property today and did nothing for 7 or 8 years, that property portfolio would be worth around £2 million, and you'd be a millionaire. And that is the power of property. It's not the strategy I'm particularly interested in, but one of the benefits of property. Property provides cash flow in the form of rent, and also gives you maximum leverage, which means that through leverage or through borrowing, the bank in fact is going to give you the vast majority, the vast amount of money to cover or pay for your property anyway. So how do we generate wealth in property? Well, typically like this. If this here red line represents your costs, and the green line is your rental, and the blue line is your capital growth or value, as long as you're fixed in your interest rate, that cost will stay fairly level. It may go up a little bit, but it should stay fairly level. Now your rental here, so you can see here the green line is slightly above the red line, which means the tenant's covering all of your costs and giving you just a little bit of profit. But over time, as the rent goes up over the years, you have additional surplus rental income, which goes towards replacing your work-related income. You can see here, this might represent your mortgage, and this represents the blue line, what you paid. Not much difference, just a little bit of equity, not much, because you borrowed as much as possible. But over time, you can see that the property value goes up, and everything above the red line contributes to your net worth. And in 10 years, or 7 to 8 years, that property will have doubled in value, and similarly, so will the rental. So that's how we generate wealth in property. The problem with that strategy is this. It relies on the one thing that you and I don't have enough of. And what's that? Time. So I want to introduce you to a very exciting strategy. It's called the Accelerated Property Formula. It's one that I've been using for 5 years, and it has served me extremely well. And I'm going to share it with you tonight. So if everyone can just quickly draw that diagram, and we'll work through that together. Okay, so there's 4 steps. You might want to write these steps down. Step number 1 is called purchase under market value. Now let's go through this figure together. So this diagram here represents a property. Now there's a couple of steps that you must learn, and certainly Mandy and I had to learn this formula. The first thing is the V stands for valuation, the PP stands for purchase price. Now essentially, and there's a lot more to this than what I'm going to cover in the next 5 minutes, but essentially the first step is that you've found a property with a value of £100,000. Now when I say value, I don't mean your valuation or an estate agent's valuation, I mean a valuation that's come from a surveyor, one that would stack up for lending purposes. So you've found a property that has a value of £100,000. But because of your skill in sourcing the right property from the right vendor, putting together the right package, and being able to negotiate that package through perfectly, you've been able to purchase that property for £80,000. So it's worth 100. Because of your skill, you purchased it for 80. You've created what we call an equity profit of £20,000. So first step is purchase under market value. And at this point, it's probably a good time within the workshop for me to mention to you that this, in fact, is one of the keys to wealth through property. The person who taught me the vast majority of strategies to do with property said to me one thing, it rings in my ears continually, and I'm going to now tell you, so it rings in your ears. He said to me, Warren, please understand this. With property, you always make your money, you never make your money when you sell, you always make your money when you buy. The estate agent, the developer, whoever it is will say, you should buy that property today because it's in a great location. Or the agent says, you should buy that because it's going to go up in value. Now, does that mean it's a good buy? No. Only thing that determines if it's a good buy is what you paid for the property less than what it's worth. Because if you bought that property for 80 and it was worth 100, you just made £20,000 when you exchanged the contract. You didn't have to paint the wall, you didn't have to put carpet on the ground, you didn't have to do up the bathroom or the kitchen, and you didn't have to wait for time. So do you reckon it's worth learning how to purchase under market value? Definitely. Then your next step, purchase under market value, is step 1. Step 2 is add value. So you might do some cosmetic improvements. You might, if it's an existing property, you might do some cosmetic improvements. If it's a new property being built, you might change the fixtures and fittings, or you might change the floor plan. And you maybe need to spend a little, just a tiny bit of money, and you might improve the property. So you can see here it was 80, you bought it for 80, it was worth 100, but you did some cosmetic improvements, and now the property's gone up to 120. So step 2 is add value. Step 1, purchase under market value. Step 2, add value. Now, the problem you've got, though, is that this £40,000 is trapped within the property. So step 3 is revalue. You go back to the bank and you say, bank, give me a new valuation. So they'll send out a surveyor to do a new valuation. Valuation comes in at 120. Then you originally bought the property for 80, so your mortgage was at 80. You go back to the bank sends out the valuer, they remortgage the property, and your loan balance goes from 80 up to 120,000. Now, in doing that, what you've been able to do is you've been able to release the cash. So we call that an equity release. You've increased your mortgage from 80 up to 120, and in the process, taken this money here out, which was equity, and you've converted it into cash. It actually physically comes out into a current account and now sits in credited funds. 40 grand just sitting in a bank account. Now, once you've converted that £40,000 into cash and it's sitting in an account, what are you going to do with it? Exactly. Buy your next property. And that's what we call, the strategy is called property stacking. You take the margin from property 1, fund property 2. Margin from 2, fund 3. Margin from 3, fund 4. And you keep going. Now, what I want you to do for me is I want you just to briefly, just give you a moment to digest the information, see how good you remember. So step 1 was purchase under market value. Step 2 was add value. Step 3 was revalue. And step 4 was put that equity to use to buy another property. Now I'm going to give you 60 seconds to explain that concept to the person sitting next to you. Okay, go for it now. You've got 60 seconds. See how well you go explaining it. Okay, let's keep going. This is just the beginning. Then you pick, once you've done it and you know how to do it successfully, then you pick your level of comfort. So buying 1 to 2 properties a year is fairly conservative. 4 to 6 properties a year is a medium strategy. 10 to 12 properties a year would be fairly active, and 12 plus properties a year, that's 1 a month, would be fairly aggressive. Although in saying that, we had one of our graduates, where we teach this strategy at an event called Unlimited Wealth, who 3 weeks ago on Saturday bought 20 properties on the one day. 20 on the one day. And I tell you as well, for anyone come here at the morning session, anyone coming back for the evening? So no one's been this morning? No? Okay. We had a couple of our graduates that were here this morning that were actually sitting right down the front here where you two ladies are, and they came to the same course in July. And when you were just doing that exercise, talking to each other, because I know them, I ran down and said, how are you going? And asked them how they're going and how's it been going since attending the course. And they said to me that since then, they now own £4.8 million worth of property. So the benchmark is always being lifted. What I thought once was good, people are like doing really good stuff. Now here's a couple of case studies. I'm going to show you some of the properties that we've bought in the past. This is the very, very first place that we ever purchased. Mandy and I bought this. This is the first place we purchased. Just taking it back to Melbourne just for a minute. We bought this place in a suburb called St Kilda. Anyone been to St Kilda? Okay. It's in a street called Fulton Street. It's a 2-bedroom flat. We paid $123,000 for it. We had it revalued 4 weeks later for $175,000 and made $52,000. When we took the $52,000 out, down here, what do you think we did with it? Bought more property. Okay, now take you to England. Let's forget about Australia. This is the first place we purchased in the UK. This was in Eastbourne. It's a 2-bedroom, top floor flat. We paid $53,000, had it revalued at $80,000 and made $27,000. Oh, it's just simple cosmetic works. You might spend a couple of grand, depending on the place. You certainly, one thing I want to encourage you here is when we say do small cosmetic improvements, I mean small cosmetic improvements. Don't go knocking out walls and, because people go in there, the biggest mistake they make is they start to look at it, what would I like if I was living here? A property is just a business. Don't get emotional about it. It's just numbers, okay? So this one here made $27,000. This one here is in Hastings. Bought for $20,000, revalued at $25,000, made $5,000. Now I know it's not a lot of money, but the reason why I put it down here is for 2 things. One, have a look at the percentage. It's 25%. But the main reason why I put this little one up here is to show people that are starting out, don't get freaked out with London prices. Now if you've got the money, fantastic. But if you're wanting to start, you've got plenty of opportunity. Like just this week, we spent time up in the likes of Manchester, Leeds, Bradford. There's some awesome opportunities around if you're prepared to get out and look a little bit. This one here, we bought for £173,000, we paid it $384 and made $211. Different scale. Okay, going back to some cheaper ones again. This one's up in just north of Manchester, bought for $27, revalued at $32, made $4,800. Okay, not huge, but yeah, we're doing lots in one hit. So what do you think is the natural progression from doing this? What do you think would be the next step up? Yeah, blocks of flats. So we're going along to developers now and we're saying, look, the developer's got 40 flats for sale. We let the developer sell 10 so we know what the market's going to pay for them. Then we go in there and say, right, we know now what the market's going to pay for them. We'll buy the remaining 30 off you if you give us a discount. And that way we get to buy lots of properties but only have to deal with one vendor. Does that make sense? Definitely. So here you go. This is a development in Cardiff. We bought 8 flats. There's the valuations. That's what they were worth. But this is what we paid, and this is the margin we make per property. So making just 16 to 18,000 pounds per property, but that was all done in one single transaction. Why am I telling you this? Because yeah, you might start off where we started by just doing a single flat or a little house, but the scope is tremendous. Okay, this is London, more expensive, 195 up to 222, but this is what we paid, and here's the margins we make. Quite nice. Okay, different style altogether. This is north. In fact, that's the picture of that property I showed you in just north of Manchester. Here's the prices we're paying. Sorry, the price is what they're worth, but this is what we're paying, and that's the margin we're making. Okay, so again, the scope is tremendous. Don't be overwhelmed by looking at this and going, oh, Warren, how am I going to do such a big deal like that? You don't. You start off small and you work your way up. And incidentally, this is a service that we now provide to people. Graduates of our program called Unlimited Wealth can actually come and join us on this. We do it every second Saturday of every month. We have a little mini property forum, and graduates can come along and they can actually buy these, because we can't buy everything that we source. Well, I'd like to, but I can't. I'm still trying. Right. So now, we've just started. I've got now a beauty for you. Who would like to know how to not have to pay any tax? Are you sure, is that all? Not only does this strategy give you good access to cash, but there is a way that you cannot pay any tax. Now, I want to ask you a question. If you bought a property for 80, had it at the end of your transaction revalued at 120, took the £40,000 out and put it in the bank and spent it, would that be a good idea, yes or no? Right. If you were earning £40,000 in a job, roughly what tax would you pay? I believe it's about 40%, is that right? Okay, so you're paying 40%. It might be a little bit less, I'm not sure, 40%. Now, if you bought this property for 80, revalued at 120, took the £40,000 out and spent it, would you pay tax on that £40,000? Yes or no? Hands up for yes? Hands up for no? Hands up for waiting for me to tell you? Right, the answer is no. Why? Because if you bought the property for 80, sold it for 120, then you would pay capital gains tax and income tax. But you bought the property for 80, you revalued it for 120, which means you just converted that £40,000 into cash, but still technically it's part of the loan. And because it's part of the loan, it can't be taxed. But there's a catch. Because you're paying now what on that 40,000? Interest. So you're paying 6%, let's say, buy-to-let interest on that. Now, would you rather pay 40% or 6%? 6%. But are you paying that 6%? No. Because when you do this, certainly we would have taught you to always do your figures based on this figure and never this figure. Because if you based your figures on here, knowing you were going to go here, it's going to just be a delusion. So you always do this. But in addition to that, because you've increased the value of the property, what usually happens to the value of the rental when the value of the property is improved? It goes up. So you're not paying that 6%. But it gets even better. Because if you're working in a job, who's solely responsible for earning this 40 grand? We are. Whereas if you do this, you've got 3 people working for you. You've got the property going up in value year after year. So if you buy 4 of these a year, you've got 4 properties now going up in value. You buy 1 a year, you've got 1 property going up in value. Who else have you got working for you? The tenant. So you've got the rent going up in value year after year. The third person is you. You're now free to do this. And because you're free, and in this strategy, in doing this, you have the one thing that everybody wants and no one ever has enough of. And what's that? Time. So you've got time. So what are you going to do with your time? Do it again. You might do 4 of them a year. Yeah? You do 4 of them a year. So you're getting not only £40,000 tax-free, which is really worth nearly 80 because there's no tax. You're free to do 4 of them a year, so you can turn that 40 into £160,000 tax-free. You've got 4 properties a year going up in value, and that's not even an aggressive strategy. But it gets even better. I haven't even started yet. There are times in doing this that you physically cannot work. Example, you might be waiting for your mortgage offer to arrive in the post. You might be waiting for completion. You might be waiting for exchange. There's just times when you can't do things. And while you're waiting in between properties, you go to this website, this fantastic website, write it down. It's www.easyjet.com. And you spend your 30 quid, because can you afford to spend 30 quid? Don't fly EasyJet. Go on Concorde. Do whatever you want to do. You can spend a little bit of money. Reward yourself. Turn your phone on roaming and go and lie on the beach until you've got something to do. Now, let me tell you something, and I'm going to keep really hammering you on this point, is that if you're sitting here and you believe this can't be done, there's only one person that is making you believe that, and guess who that is? Yourself. Mandy and I have been doing this for the last 5 years. From that very, very first property in St Kilda, we made $52,000. We didn't need to be sold. We knew exactly that this was where we were heading. And incidentally, property is very rewarding. It gives you good satisfaction. You can do things. You're actually physically involved. It's nice. And it's fun. And it's not difficult to do. Once you've got the habit, once you've got the knowledge, you're set, you're away. So that's what we call the property stacking strategy. So who would like to do the property stacking strategy on a permanent basis as opposed to working? Exactly, we all would. And you live in the best country in the world for property investment. It's better than anywhere else. It's one of the only countries in the world where your tenants actually cover all of your costs. Doesn't happen like that in Australia. In fact, most of the world is either neutrally or negatively geared. The UK is one of the only exceptions where the market is positively geared. So if you're sitting around waiting, it's better stop waiting and get stuck into it. Right. Part 2, creating a passive income. So in that formula that I showed you before, if you wanted £100,000 a year and you divided that by 8%, you would need £1.25 million. It's the property strategy that gives us and allows us to build our asset portfolio. It's the property that allows us to do that. But in all honesty, the property strategy is not really going to give you tremendous amounts of income. Lots of equity, lots of assets, access to cash in equity, but not a lot of income replacement. But you'll still do fine. Like Mandy and I, until we did the second strategy, we'd take normally that £40,000, we'd maybe split it in half, 20 grand would go towards a wage, which we'd spend tax-free, and the other 20 would invest in properties. And that's how we actually survived on the strategy. Everything over and above this, all the profit we got from rental margin was just cream on the cake. But then we came across another strategy, which just works so perfectly that once I actually learnt this strategy, I was completely hooked. And I want to share that strategy with you now. So this is now second part 2, creating a passive income. So this strategy is called renting out shares. Anyone heard of renting out shares? No? A couple of people? Good. Now there's a couple of things I want to cover first. One, you don't have to do this. If your cup of tea is not shares, leave it alone. But you'd be mad if you didn't. In this example, we are simply using shares as a vehicle to create a monthly cash flow. We're not trading the market. You're not going to sit in front of a computer screen and have to worry about whether it's going up or down. You're not going to be drawing lines. You don't actually care whether the share goes up. You don't care whether the share goes down. The share is purely a vehicle for achieving a result. And that result is to generate a monthly cash flow. It's a strategy that is not very widely taught in the UK. It's a strategy that's not very widely taught in Australia. It's a strategy that is taught a little bit in the States, but typically around the world, hardly anybody knows about it. You ring your broker if you leave this seminar, or you ring a broker tomorrow, he won't know what you're talking about. One thing I want to talk about first that's important is if you get into the property market and you don't know what you're doing and you make a boo-boo, you could probably survive. Okay, just relying on capital growth, you probably will be okay. You cannot afford to do that with this strategy. So I'm just making sure you know on the outset that you can't go into this half-ready. That classic saying, a little bit of knowledge is extremely dangerous, applies very much to this strategy. So if you're thinking and you like this, don't do it until you've got the knowledge base. But tonight I'm going to cover conceptually how it works. And I've used non-technical terms because it's very confusing, and I'm going to keep it very, very simple. So for anyone in the room here that is familiar, or this starts to make sense as we go through, please excuse that, because for the sake of everyone, I want to make sure everyone understands what I'm talking about. But although I've made all these negative points, once you grasp this strategy and feel confident, it will allow you to quit work in the shortest possible time, and you'll start to see as we go through. So renting out shares. So what are the benefits? One, it's extremely easy to do. It's safe, providing you take out insurance. It's quick and you get paid monthly in advance. Your returns range from a massive 6% a month, not a year, a month. That's 72% per annum and can be higher. That's just the average. 6% a month. You can enter and exit the market whenever you want. It's totally regulated and controlled, and it doesn't matter how many people do it. Right. So it's extremely easy, it's safe, it's quick, your returns are high, you can get out of it and get into it whenever you want. It's regulated and controlled, and it doesn't matter how many people do it. So what are the risks? Well, if we were to look at our property risks, we don't look too bad because we don't have a problem with interest rates. We don't have a problem with structural damage. We don't have a problem with vacancy. And we don't have a problem with bad tenants. But in the stock market, is there a potential problem if the market collapses? Yes, so that is the one thing we need to protect. So how do we protect ourselves against a share market correction or downturn, or your share individually going down? Anyone in the room here currently own shares? See a show of hands? Quite a few of us. Anyone in the room here see the value of their shares go down in the last 18 months? Right, so this strategy is going to be particularly of particular interest to you. How do we protect our shares against a downturn? Right, we're going to use a thing called hedging. So what is hedging? Hedging is essentially an insurance policy for your shares. Now let me explain it this way. If you and I went out there and bought a car, so we go out and we buy a car, most of us that are pretty smart are going to go and get an insurance policy to cover the car in case we have an accident, aren't we? Now, if you go and buy a car and take out insurance, and you drive your car one day and you're driving down the road and you have a terrible accident and you smash the car, then you have the right to make a claim on the insurance policy, and the insurer will either rebuild your car, repair it, buy you a new one, or give you the cash, okay? It happens exactly the same way with shares. You buy a share, you take out insurance. If the share drops in value, you can make a claim on your insurance policy, and the insurer has to buy the shares off you, but at your original price, so you don't lose any money. Make sense? You have up until the expiry of that insurance policy to make your claim. So typically, we're going to take a 1-year insurance policy at a time. So just to really get that point 100% locked away, so I'm going to explain it one more time. You buy the share, you insure it. If your share drops in value, you can make a claim, and the insurance company has to buy the shares off you at the price you've paid. So if you buy, let's say, a Widget Inc. share, or a Vodafone share, or a Tesco share, or a Barclays Bank share, or who cares? Let's call it a Widget Inc. share for £5. If that share, you then now take out your insurance, and your insurance costs you roughly around 40p per share, or approximately 8%. Now, if your share drops in value to £3, what can you sell your share for? £5. Your share drops in value, what can you sell your share for? £5. Your share drops in value to £1, what can you sell it for? £5. Now, let's say it's an Enron share, and it drops in value to 0. What can you sell your shares for? £5. But if your share goes up in value to £7, what can you sell your share for? £7. Okay, so you got it. So in summary, if the share goes up in value, you make money. If the share goes down in value, your original capital is protected. Your risk is limited to just the cost of the insurance policy. So in this example, you've reduced your risk from £5 to just 40p, or from assuming a 100% risk down to just 8%. That's pretty good, isn't it? So of course, if the share drops down to 0, all it's going to cost you is 40p. So who would have liked to have known about that strategy before September 11? Yeah, exactly. But all we're doing here, remember, with this strategy, it's purely a vehicle. We're buying the share to generate a monthly income. So it's a bit like buying the car. We're buying the car. The next thing we do is insure it. You buy the property, usually the next thing you do is insure it. Buildings insurance, landlord's insurance, the same thing. You're buying a share, you're insuring it. So if anything goes wrong, you're protected. Next thing we want to do now is generate a monthly cash flow. So this is actually the strategy. So take property, for example. With property, if you purchase the property, so if you were going to invest in the property market, the first thing you do is you'd purchase the property. The second thing you do is protect it. And you might protect your property by taking out a fixed interest rate, landlord's insurance, or things like buildings insurance. Then you'd rent it out for a given period, and we'd call that the tenancy. That's the tenancy. Then the person who rents it off you pays you a fee, or you charge them a fee to use your property during the tenancy, and that's known as the rental. Then at the end of the tenancy, the person has the right to either give you the property back or renew their lease and keep renting. Now, in a very similar way, it applies with this strategy. The first thing you do is you purchase the share. The second thing you do is you protect the share. The third thing you do is you rent that share out for a given period. The fourth thing you do is you charge a fee to the person who's going to rent the share off you. Then at the end of that tenancy, the person who's renting your share can either continue to rent off you or give the share back to you and you rent it out to somebody else. Does that make sense? Remember, the share is just a vehicle. Now, if I reckon I can almost guess what's going through your mind. Why would someone on earth want to rent my shares? And what are they going to do with my shares? And why don't they just buy them themselves anyway? Who's got those questions going through their mind? Now, would you like me to answer those questions? It doesn't really matter, by the way, because we don't care what these people do with our shares. It's a bit like property. If you rent out a property, do you knock on the door 3 days later and say, hi, I'm the landlord, I'm actually the one renting this place. Do you mind if I just ask what you're actually doing in my place? Are you realistically going to do that? Are you going to do it in a month's time? No. So do you really care what these people do with your shares as long as they give them back to you and pay the rent? No. But do you still want to know? Yes. Right. I knew it. Okay. So who's involved in the strategy? Two people. There's you and there's Fred, who's the renter. So I've just made Fred up. Now, one thing I want to clarify with this, it's not like the property market in that someone like you or me physically inspects a property and decides, yes, we want to live in there. And then we go to the managing agent and we fill in an application form and we set up a direct debit and all those things. This is all done electronically and is controlled by the stock exchange of the country that you're trading. It happens within a heartbeat. It's very exciting, extremely exciting. But essentially two people. So there's no physical interaction between the two people. You never know who Fred is and Fred will never know who you are. And you could be living here in Great Britain and Fred could be living in anywhere, sitting on an island somewhere. It doesn't matter. Okay, so who's in the strategy? You. You own the shares, Fred is the renter. You want to simply use the share as a vehicle to generate cash flow. Fred, on the other hand here, is renting your shares to try and make a profit, somehow, some way. Now you say to Fred, listen Fred, I own 100 Widget Inc. shares. I'm happy to rent these shares to you. Now as part of your rental contract, the rental contract works like this. You have to give Fred the option to buy the shares. That's part of the deal. So you say to Fred, look, I've got 100 Widget Inc. shares. You can buy my shares off me. You have the right to buy my shares or the right to rent my shares for a limited period of time. Maybe that's 1 month. And you can buy them off me at a pre-agreed price, and the price I'm going to set for you is £5.50. Now, why do you think you've set that price at £5.50? What's the share cost you in the first place? £5 plus your insurance, 40p. So it's got to be above your cost, doesn't it? So normally you set it just a little bit above your costs. Now, the higher you set that above your cost, the lower the rental is. You see, that's why you want to keep it pretty close. So you say to Fred, Fred, I own 100 Widget Inc. shares. You can buy the shares off me at £5.50, and for you to have that exclusive right to my shares, you need to pay me a fee for that, and the fee is 25p per share. Okay? So that's the conditions. Now, Fred here pays the 25p in rent per share and can only buy them off you at £5.50. So the reason why Fred would want to do this is for this reason. Fred could have bought the share for £5.50 or could have paid £5 like you did. But he now has been able to control a share worth £5.50, but instead of having to outlay £5.50 for him to control the share worth £5.50, he's only had to put down how much? 25p. Doesn't sound like much, does it? Now he's hoping by putting that 25p down, for him to make money, that share must do something. And what is that thing that it must do? Go up. So Fred is gambling. He's done all his research on his computer and he's done all his bits and pieces and he thinks the share's going to go up. So he then says he finds someone like you and he wants to rent your shares because he thinks they're going to go up. Now Fred can't make any money unless the share gets to at least what price? 5.75, because he can only buy them at 5.50, plus he's already paid out 25p in rent. So the share owes him £5.75. Now this is how Fred makes money. If the share goes up in value to £7, what do you think Fred's going to immediately do? He's going to buy them off you at 5.50 and within a heartbeat sell them at £7 and make himself £1.25. Make sense? Right. Another way he makes money. If the share goes up in value to £7, the rental value will also go up. So the rental value may go up to, let's say, 50p. So then he's got two options. He can, one, buy the share and sell it, or two, he can just on-sell the rental contract, you see? So if the rental goes up in value from 25p to 50p, he can just sell the rental contract. Now here's the downside. Freds of the world are in a very highly skilled industry. They're options traders. They literally look at computer screens all day and they make gambles. And 85% will lose money. On the other hand, you can't lose money. You're simply buying the share, renting, insuring it, and renting it out. Now, what's going to happen is this. You do this on a monthly cycle. And every month, typically at the beginning of the month, you'd buy the share, insure it, and rent it out. Now, at the end of the month, two things are going to happen. One, the share price did go up, and Fred bought the shares off you. If Fred buys the shares off you, you get all the money back that you paid for the share, all the money back you paid for the insurance. You get the difference between your cost, which is £5.40, and the sales price, £5.50, so you went the 10p per share, plus you got the rental income per share as well. And if Fred does buy them off you, what are you going to do at the first day of the next month? Same thing, buy the share, insure it, rent it out. Now there's times as well when the share doesn't go up, and Fred will lose his money, which means that you'll still collect the rental money, but at the end of the month, you'll still own the shares as well. And if you're in that position, what are you going to do at the beginning of next month? Just rent them out again. Just keep renting them, keep every month until someone buys them off you, and once they do, you've made money anyway, you just go and buy them again and you rent them, keep renting them again. Okay, so we've been through that. So Fred can always lose money, you always make money. So here's a couple of case studies. Okay, so the first thing, this is actually ones that I've done. You've got to select the share. So here I've selected News Corporation as the share. That's the share I've bought. I've bought 12,000 of them. I paid 11 cents in insurance and I got 98 cents in rental for the month. So I take 98 cents minus 11 cents multiplied by the amount I bought equals $10,440. So for the month, I made $10,440, or I got a 4.9% return or a 59% return per annum if that happened every month. Now the interesting part about this is, do you know how long it took me to do that? It took me about 2.5 minutes at the beginning of the month. Because all I did is I had to get the data, so you can either see it electronically or you can do it live through your broker. And you get the data and you're sitting there, you're just making a decision, you're looking at it going, okay, hang on a minute, so I'm going to get 98 cents, insurance 11 cents. Okay, so I can make that much money. Yeah, okay, I'll buy so many of them, bang, and it's done. Here's another example. Different company, 20,000 shares, so I bought 20,000, the insurance was 0.032 cents, the rental was 27.5 cents. So 27.5 minus 0.032 multiplied by 20,000 is $4,860. Made that $4,860 in less than 2.5 minutes. Now this is where it gets interesting. Now I can see some questions burning now. Right, here is the part. Where do you think I got the money from to rent out the shares? From here. I didn't actually have to find the money. I used my equity. I turned it to cash and I went and rented out shares. Can you see how powerful this is? So if you took £40,000, if you took the £40,000 you made here and you put that into renting out shares, that £40,000 would generate for you around £24,000 a year. Now you're not going to get that sort of return through property. Renting out property. That's why we use property for building our asset base, renting out shares for creating a cash flow. Now if you went and bought your 4 properties a year and you put your £160,000 into renting out shares, then you're going to make £96,000 a year. And that is our magic number. If we go back to our wealth formula, you want £100,000 a year, you divide that by 60%. So exactly, I've actually told you to get 72, but let's be conservative, divided by 60%. How many assets do you need to own? Only £160,000. So where are you going to get the £160,000 from? Your property. And ladies and gentlemen, There is no other way on earth that an average person like you and I can get that sort of result in that sort of time frame. These two strategies work so well together that if you learn them, you will retire wealthy in a very short period of time. And if you don't believe me, the only person stopping you from creating that wealth is, guess who? Yourself. Because we teach this, people do it. It's not difficult. You've just got to acquire the knowledge. So by learning just two simple strategies, you've created a passive income. You can now focus on working towards your wealth creation objectives more full time and start to enjoy this thing that we have called living, life. So what's the value of knowledge? It's priceless, isn't it? It's priceless. So now comes my magical time, and seeing as though this is my last seminar, I want to ask you the question. At the beginning of this seminar, I said I'm going to live up to my side of the deal, and that deal was I wanted to prove to you and talk to you about how the world of money works, and I wanted to give you two strategies that you can learn about that can improve the financial quality of your life. Now I want to ask you the question, have I delivered? Yes. Thank you very much. I do appreciate that. Now, you can all go home now. Okay, just kidding. Now, for those of you, I know that we've covered a lot of information in an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. It feels like 5 minutes for me. It just went so quick. And in some ways, I'm a little bit sad that this is although I'm actually the one that teaches the courses. We'll have a question session in a moment, is that I'm the one that still does the courses, but I won't be doing these introductory events anymore. But for those of you that are serious, and for those of you that actually want to get out there and make a difference, and at the end of the day, as I said in the beginning, wealth is a choice. It's a decision to make, and you're going to be back in that position of pleasure and pain. I'm in my comfort zone, I know I've got to do something, I know the system's not going to look after me, I know I'm in strife, but you're in like this quandary of like, what am I going to do? All I'm going to say to you is make a decision, do something. You haven't got a choice really anyway. Because at the end of the day, the only person that's preventing you from becoming wealthy is you, and you might as well put that behind you and move on. At the end of the day, wealth is a choice. You're stuck here between here and here. Now you can either walk out that door tonight, and who knows where you'll be in a year's time or 2 years' time, or you can make the commitment and actually change the way your financial future is starting today. It's up to you. But I encourage you to seriously think about it, because if you want to create more life and you want to get where you're going, you're going to have to make some changes. So those of you that want to register, see any of the team and get on the path to financial freedom. And I just wanted to say in closing, I had a really good time tonight. And I just wanted to say I wish all of you the very best with your future. Go out there and live your dream. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Hi everybody, it's Jean. I guess the best thing for me is that I actually stayed for the 2 days. I must have been one of the most skeptical people coming in here yesterday. And I mean, I spoke to a few people in the morning and I said, you know, we can get our money back at 3 o'clock. And everybody goes, oh, can you? No, they won't give it back. And I said, no, I'm sure he will. But I even went and checked with one of the girls. And she never even hesitated. She said, yes, if you got a problem, come back and I'll deal with it. And I think at about 2:55, I got a text on my mobile phone from a friend saying, have you left yet? and I immediately text back about 3 or 4 people who were all thinking, you know, what an idiot, and just said, this is the most amazing thing I've ever been on. I cannot believe, no, really.
Thank you.
£1,500 for the amount of information that I've got over these 2 days. It's been amazing. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. You're making me feel emotional. We've got a point you'd like to make over here? I didn't hear that. Do I want to hear that?
Hi, I'm Kate. I've actually shattered a lot of my Australian limited beliefs this weekend, all the stuff that my parents fed me, and I wonder why I got into personal debt at the age of 25. So it's fantastic, and I'm ready to go plant my money tree.
Fantastic. Well done.
Thank you.
All right, and then we'll come over there.
Hi, I'm Alan. I'd just like to say thank you very much. You've provided so many tools on our fingertips now that would probably take years of research, reading in libraries, and probably never achieving that. And I just think you've condensed it all into 2 days that is going to provide richness in our future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we've got a point, I think you're going to have to pass the mic along.
Hi again. It sounds very corny, and I can't believe I'm saying it because it's very cringeworthy, but I don't yet feel rich, but I certainly feel enriched with the knowledge to get there. So thanks again for that.
That's great. Thank you very much. And just pass the mic forward.
Hi, it's Bill. You asked us on day one what we expected to get from the course, and I wrote down the knowledge and tools to implement a strategy to become wealthy within 2 years. I think you've done exactly that for me, and I would like to thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, it's Jackie again, who doesn't like the mic. Mark and I have actually been aware of the option strategies for well over a year now. We got some very good education from another company. But we never did anything with it. And what this weekend's done for me is provided the clarity, and you've explained things in such a way and built confidence in the seminar in such a way that I'm quite happy to go out and start working with this now. And yeah, it's a shame that we didn't sort of start working with the options a year ago when we first found out about them. But the course has certainly given me the confidence to go out and play with them now.
Fantastic.
So thank you.
Excellent point. Oh, okay.
No, I've got the mic.
You've got the mic. You're in control.
One of the things I would say, I doubt that the lady at the back was the most sceptical coming in on Saturday.
It's not competition for who's the most sceptical, is it?
But what I would say is that today especially has been, well, yesterday was an eye-opener, but today even more so, because for a number of years back, I was Fred. I spent a fortune in options trading. So I've known exactly what you've been talking about all day today, except that I was on the wrong side of it all the time.
Okay.
It cost me a fortune, and now I'm going to make all that back.
Absolutely.
So, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Pam again. I think following on, what's that lady's name? Jackie. Following on from what Jackie said, I think really the difference of this type of course compared to possibly previous ones that it didn't get you into the realm of being able to take action is that Warren's giving us his personal experience from the heart in a completely empowering way. And the people around him, you know, when I joined up, because I've been in the financial industry as a physical copper trader, I'd never even put my toe in the water about options. And I met, I think, his general manager, Rob, at the first taster.
Yep.
And Rob emanated confidence, but not wide boy, wiseacre, city boy stuff that would put most people off who don't know about financial vehicles to become wealthy. And, you know, I think the crux of it is here is that there's a heart, and everyone feels, at least I have, everybody I've met here and seen in this whole audience are very clear people, you know, very centered people. And I think that's what's attracted here. And I think really it emanates from you, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much for sharing that. And that's nice. I'll see. Keep sharing. Let's keep sharing our knowledge. Thank you. Another point up the back.
Hi, I'm Jenny. Just going back on the sceptical thing. Up until yesterday morning, when I was riding my bike in the cold weather and walking into the building, I was contemplating what type of pain to inflict on you if this thing was a bit of a farce. But now I'm thinking of the pain I'm going to inflict on the people who are bringing skepticism on me for coming here this weekend, because you've enriched my way of thinking and the way to do things. And going back on the comment that I made to you earlier about being really scared when I did buy property off the plan earlier on this year, I didn't actually sleep for a week after doing it, and then I only slept because I didn't sleep for a week. And after the knowledge that you gave me yesterday, I actually had the best night's sleep knowing that I've put my foot in the right direction now.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
I think Warren's amazing because I've been to other courses, other sort of mini seminars, and he's just really, really inspirational, and his energy and exuberance just leaps out at you and just grabs you, and you're like, oh my God. And he's got you all kind of being friendly with each other, and he straight away breaks down this, property management and share strategies. He kind of babyfies it and makes it all nice and gentle, and you kind of feel like you're sitting in a living room kind of just chatting about it and learning about it, so it's really great.
Well, the share option basically is to how to generate a passive income. That's something that I'm looking to do, as I now no longer have a full-time job. So what I learned today, that's very exciting, how to generate regular monthly income.
And I think what I'm going to do is probably take the lead on the property side. So I shall be out there tomorrow researching the market, getting the newspapers, talking to estate agents, and really sort of working out what my rental return might be. Can't wait to get going.
The course, the benefit it gave me as well in terms of the property side. I have a property with all the equity in it and the mortgage paid off, and I thought, great, and that's what I wanted. I felt safe. But what this has done is completely turned that incorrect strategy on its head.
Came along this weekend extremely sceptical. Made the biggest decision of my life to invest the money and come along. Thought I would take the first few hours to see whether or not it was worth that investment, and within the first hour or so I had made that decision that it's probably the best decision of my life. The information I've been given has just totally enriched my life. I feel I can take that forward now and start to change my life over the next few weeks. Having made that decision to come along, I now have another decision to make about actually using it. I'm determined to use that information wisely. So the information we've received has been absolutely fantastic.
I just found the whole process of what he went through, the way that he spoke to us without speaking down to us, and just everything just came across so clearly. And I felt that I was talking to a friend, and that he was just passing on general information. The whole course has been so enjoyable, so easy to understand. I've loved every moment of it.
As far as Warren is concerned, I think he's a natural. He was funny, he was informative, and genuinely seemed to really care about everybody who was in the room today. And that was obvious and very clear to see. Thank you.
I think we came looking for a better understanding of options, and we're fired up ready to get going tomorrow. It's so simple, and the way Warren's explained it was so straightforward. It's just a case of getting on and doing it.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that we've actually got a couple of very small rental properties in Greater London, and we've struggled to understand how best to sort of expand that. And the information that Warren shared with us yesterday has really helped put that in perspective and get us to understand how we can actually increase what we've already got in a profitable way. So it's been really good for us.
I think what we're going to do tomorrow is look for a new mortgage. We've really realised from this course that we can release equity from the house we already have and use that to invest in our first property.
With any luck, hopefully we'll be able to just keep building on that and keep doing the same sort of scheme all the way through, so that's the plan.
And not having to always look for money, we can just keep remortgaging, which is unbelievable. We've never even thought of that before, so it's great.
My background was in commodity trading quite a number of years ago, and although I know about hedging mechanisms, I did not really realize what I could do in terms of options and derivatives. And the course really brought home a very, very safe strategy. So it's taken the fear out of that completely for me, and I'm willing to get going as of tomorrow.
Well, we came along on the course because we've done some property stuff back in New Zealand. And we went to the original seminar with Warren, the free one, Introduction to Wealth, and we thought it was, Lisa went along first, thought it was fantastic, got me along.
Got so excited I dragged him back the same night.
And so we came along and it's been fantastic, and we've got, I think it's to raise the issue that we can do something in the UK rather than just back in New Zealand, and we can have an income out of the UK and we can work with the shares, etc. It's been very, very worthwhile.
In respect of Warren, what a fantastic tutor. we've had fun, we've had a laugh. It's all been very, very relaxed.
The basis of the course, from what I'm interested in, is that Warren's doing it not just to make money. You know, and it emanates out through the staff and the whole attitude of the whole seminar and the course, and really it's worth every penny, more than that.
I think that it's given us some pointers on how to use my time better, certainly, and to make an income that releases us from, you know, what we're doing right now. And to take advantage of the UK market.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that the course today has been absolutely fantastic. The whole weekend has been fantastic. I was very sceptical, as was Jonathan, my other half. We came along, we kept a very open mind, and we will leave, and are leaving today, better people for actually listening to what he's had to say. It's been fantastic. Thank you very much indeed.
For a lot of people, this course has been very valuable, but from your own personal experience, what's been the most valuable part of it for you?
Two items. One is the assessment, or knowing how to assess the right property to buy.
Yes.
Secondly, the extra information I obtained in how to source various types of finance.
It's the area of finance. Actually, Warren said something which I would have made a mistake, and that's why I came to this course, and I find it very helpful because that has got me my second property at the moment. So it's the area of finance, and I've acquired the knowledge. I'm really grateful for that. Excellent.
I think the most valuable aspect of the course is the fact that it gives one a more specific set of instructions of how to go about investing in real estate. My wife and I were always interested, but we're not very sure how to go about it. The most important, most valuable aspect of the course is the fact that it allows you to quantify the risk and decide where to park your money.
Before we decided to attend the course, we didn't have too much knowledge as to what it's all about. And interested in the property markets and the possibilities from there, we decided that coming here, a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience we'll be able to gain from a weekend like this, and that's what we've taken with us.
For me, the most important was how to make the numbers add up and actually how to make the money out of property.
The most valuable part for me is the fact that, you know, irrespective of your individual circumstances, that you are not you're not a lost cause, and that something can be done. There are different approaches that can be used to solve your particular financial problem, and I really found that very helpful personally for me. Because prior to coming, I really thought that maybe I couldn't be helped because my situations are unique. But I mean, this bespoke service I thought was splendid, and I really liked that. I thought that was all of it was excellent, but I really liked that bit of it because I feel as if I can go away from here and do something. I can go and make it happen for me.
What I've really enjoyed and the most value to me was the knowledge that I learned today. It's far more than you could ever learn from anywhere. I've never known an organisation or a company or anybody to give so much information. That's the first thing. And the other thing is the motivation side. I am so fired up and I can't believe the excitement that I have to just get out there and do it.
It was nice to speak to people and listen from people who've done it themselves. So I was just picking up some of the basics. It's common sense in hindsight, but it's it drove a point home.
One of the main valuable parts is about different mortgage packages. I never realised that. I always thought I was limited to just what was in a high street bank, and obviously the banks aren't going to tell you that neither. So I was supposed to open up a whole new world of different kind of mortgages I can get, and there's a way to go forward basically and release the finances I have in my property now, and to go forward and start getting my portfolio together.
The realisation that the opportunity is out there, and that that it is a decision, it's a choice, and that we can choose to do it, and that I can choose to do it, and I'm excited about that.
It was demystifying the whole mortgage process, finding out about flexible mortgages, how they work, just having somebody explain the different mortgages, how they work and how they don't work. That alone saves you thousands of pounds, but there was so much more to the course as well. That was just a starting point. But just if you just stayed for that, it would be worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
having been in the property market for some time, there's always been lots of questions, and I haven't been able to always source the information. I didn't know if the questions I had were to be answered by an accountant, a financial advisor, a property person, an estate agent. Coming here today and having everybody here together actually answered every single question that I had already come across. And I didn't even know the questions myself until I was here. Questions dawned on me throughout the day.
If somebody did say to you, why should I do the course? How did you feel about it? What was it? What did you get out? What did you benefit from going on it? What would you say to them?
Positive action. I am the type that just leave things around, don't get things done. Yeah. And now my whole life is changed. My thinking is changed. My whole mentality is changed towards positive action, taking action, not sitting down, and just do things that you enjoy doing it. It's a bit of pain, but it's fun as well. Yeah. And above all, you break through financially. Go for it. It's value for money.
No matter at what level, at what stage you are in the property markets, this course can teach you something new, and you will gain new information, experience from chatting to other people, but you can grow already no matter what stage you're at in the property market as well.
Go for it, and money well spent, definitely.
I would say that's your first investment. You'll get a huge amount of benefit out of it, and more so, particularly, you'll have the information, you have the support of the backup support of the company, and as long as they come over, when they leave, they take action, then I believe they'll be successful.
You will never ever gain the knowledge anywhere that you will gain by going on this course. You cannot get that information because people will not give it to you free. You have to pay for it, and it is worth every penny.
My decision to do it was based upon me looking at my own life, looking at what I've been doing thus far for the last 20 years and realising I haven't got where I want to get to. So basically, I can't keep on doing the same thing over and over again. I'm going to get the same results. So now it's a chance, and I have to make a firm decision to change what I'm doing, do something drastically different to get different results. And for some people, it may be a fear factor. They may feel a bit of fear about doing it, but I think it's worth the risk. It is worth the risk, and you're never going to know. You can get to your deathbed, so to speak, and look back in your life and think, well, I wish I'd done this and wish I'd done that. But you're not only going to know by trying things. You may make mistakes sometimes and fall down, but it's getting back up again every time and keep on going forward.
If what Warren says is true, and the results he's had, and the results many other people have had are true, then there's no reason why this shouldn't be something good to do, because the returns could be phenomenal